Alright, in this tutorial we're going to quickly move through the tool set for applying your skin modifier to your model so that you can apply your bone set and pose your character. Now I've selected my mesh. As you can see, my editable polymesh is selected here, and what I'm going to do is go to the modifier stack, go down here to skin. There are several options here for skin. We're just going to use the one called skin, and we're going to open that up. Okay, edit envelopes and add bones, and we're going to select those bones that are available to us that we've just got done plotting out there. Alright, now we can check our vertices option there. What that does is allow us to access the vertices on that mesh surface so that we can weight those verts to the different bones. So as you can see, when I clicked on bone 001 in my list here, this what's called an envelope came up, and will allow you to now go ahead and modify the weighting on those verts. Now, very simply, weighting is a term that's used for the effect, the percentage of effect that these different bones will have on this weighted vert. So, for instance, if I select this envelope or this bone, then what I can do is go in here and select the vertices along this particular loop, edge loop, and come down here where it says absolute effect. Absolute is from 0 to 1. So if 1 were applied, it would absolutely 100% be weighted or be influenced by this particular bone. So I've weighted that 100% influence from this particular bone. Now I'm going to go back to this bone and weight it 0.5 or 50% influenced by that bone. So the effect of that is that when I come here, come out of the skin modifier and select on this particular bone and rotate that, you can see now that this row is 100% affected and it's moving right with the bone, but this row is only half affected by this bone and half affected by this bone, 50% weighted, so that you get less influence on that and you get a nice stretch, squash and stretch effect on that soft tissue. So it's working fine, and we'll go back in here and continue to weight our verts. Now, the weighting verts on a skin is about as time consuming as applying UVs. So it is a process, and what I typically do on a low poly mesh is to go ahead and select on the root bone, which is right here. It's selected now. Go ahead and grab all the verts and apply them all 100% weighting to that root node. The reason I do that is to avoid any verts from not being weighted 100% to the mesh in the final version. So if I weight them to the root node first, then I know that no vert is going to be missed. Now from that point on, I work out. So I will grab a bone here and go ahead and grab all the verts from that point down, from all the children that are going to be applied, and go ahead in here. I'm going to also pick up these verts. Oops. Now you can see right away why it's important to try to do this with a low resolution mesh, because if you try to do this with a high resolution mesh, you'll have to resort to other tools that are not as accurate, such as modifying these envelopes, and I'll show you that in a moment. So once you have that, you can now apply 100% influence from that bone. Select the next bone down, grab these verts, and do the same thing. Apply 100% weighting to those, and so on down the chain. And I do the same thing for the spine and the arms and the fingers and all. Alright, the reason we do this is to make sure that we're getting a very clean, very accurate mesh being influenced by minimal bones. Here's a note, a tip to you, game artists. Typically, the bone weighting is limited to 3 bones. So the reason we do this in the way that we are doing it now is to avoid 4 bone or 5 bone weighting. Sometimes 20 bones affect one vert. So this is the technique that we typically use when we're weighting our meshes so that we can avoid that. It's very difficult to resolve if you're not working with a very low mesh to start, and yeah, it's very, very time consuming to resolve. So, alright, now once we have our base weighting applied, what we're going to do is start sharing the influence between the bones. By that I mean the foot and the ankle and the leg. Let me turn off the grid here so you can see better. There's going to be some cross-influencing here, some sharing of influence of the bones so that we can get our skin looking like a soft tissue. So right now, if we move this bone, select on that bone and rotate it, you can see that there's not a soft tissue effect there because all the verts are weighted 100% to one bone. So now we're going to go back in here, selecting on the mesh envelopes. We're going to start selecting vertices that are not currently weighted to these bones. Go ahead and select the bone first, and then the weights, or the verts that I want to apply influence. Alright, I have my correct envelope, and now I'm going to go ahead and select the verts that I want to influence. These are being influenced too much because I've lost the rigidity that I need in that area where that bone runs through there. So I'm going to need a lot less influence on that, let's say 2, and none at all probably on this. Now usually you do not want to push weighting away, which means zero this out, because it has a tendency to go find a different bone. So what we do is actually select the bone that you want to apply the weighting to, select that again, and then draw the weighting onto that bone rather than push the weighting from the other bone. I can see that these are still not doing what I want it to do, so I'll give it even less influence than that. Oops, again, this is what happens when you push weight. So we're going to select that. We've got our verts selected still, and we'll just go ahead and dial that down. There's almost nothing there, so that will look a little more correct. Alright, so let's try this for soft tissue. We'll draw the weighting in. We'll say 0.4. Now, let's see how that looks. Okay, that's going to give us a better effect for what we want. A little bit of a soft tissue in there. Because we have, let's go ahead and straighten that foot up. Go to an orthographic view, and go ahead and pose that foot back up there. And there we go. Alright, now let me show you another technique really quick for rigging. Once you have your skin modifier applied, what we do is just double click on the root node, which selects all of the bones. You come over here and make sure you're on frame 0. And then what we like to do is set keys. Just set keys for all your bones on frame 0 and frame 1 or frame 5. I just typically go to frame 5. Alright, and then on frame 10 what you can do is start your rigging test animation. And so what we're going to do is go to our orthographic view front. I'm going to grab a leg bone and we're going to just rotate that out. And if I have auto key on, it will go ahead and make a keyframe. Do you see this green tick right in the channel here? So now I know that if I go back down, I'll still have my base pose, but if I go out, I'll have a rigging pose. Now on the next frame up, I'm going to rotate it a different direction. Okay, and then 5 more frames or 1 more frame, depending on how you like to work. I'm going to rotate it another. That seems a little too much. We want to make sure that we're not rotating his limbs farther than the natural degree of motion would be. So if it looks odd to you, it probably is going too far. So once you have your rigging animation in there, you can scroll through here without worrying about screwing up your bind pose. That's a Maya term, isn't it? Your skin pose. So you can now go ahead and check out how your mesh is deforming, and you can see that I've got interpenetrating walls here in my mesh, so I know that I need to go back and adjust that. So if I go to one extreme pose and go in here and get my edges on, I can go select the mesh, come back in here and see the little gray lines. I'll select on this and I'll know that I need to go ahead and pick up some of these verts here, go back to my absolute effect and go ahead and dial those up a little bit. You can also click on them if they get too far. And what I'm doing is applying weight to those verts, influence them while the mesh is working. Now also you can see that these particular weights are really tearing, so there's 100% weighting on those. Also it needs to be shared. So we're not going to share across from one side of the body to the next. We're going to go share on the root node. So as you can see, they share, these two bones share that already. So what I'm going to do now is select these verts and go ahead and give some influence there. Alright. Alright, now that in a nutshell is how we see if our mesh is working properly, deforming properly before we hand it off, or if we're doing our own rigging. This is simply, very simply how you get started doing that. And then when you go ahead and apply your normal maps with all the nice deformation in here, you can see how well, how high resolution that can look and deform really well also. Now you can see there's a lot of artifacting in here. Well, the weights are just simply not assigned properly yet, so go back in and work this area just like I've worked this area here until all your weighting is completed.